Hi, this is Eric Martin with Board Game Geek News. Going to be looking today at Stefan Feld's La Isla from Alea/Ravensburger. 2 to 4 player game, plays in about 45 minutes. And unlike the Stefan Feld games you might be thinking of, all his recent releases like Trajan, Bruges, Amerigo, Aquasphere, Bora Bora, there's a lot of them. Unlike a lot of those type games, this is a somewhat simpler design and more something a throwback to maybe half dozen years ago that reminds me, in a funny way, of Roma. But maybe I should first explain the game and then tell you what I mean. Here are the components of La Isla laid out, ready for play. Again, the game is 2 to 4 players. You start with a marker on the scoring track and you're trying to score the most points. How you do that is you're going to be exploring this island and finding these little critters that are scattered randomly on the island, with the island itself being randomly assembled each game from the different tiles, and they all fit together with the tokens then plopped on top. All right, you are going to be trying to pick up these critters. There are 5 types of critters. There's 5 types of landscapes to go on to. You start with 5 explorers. You start with 1 resource of each type, i.e. 5. There's lots of 5s that repeat as you look at this game board. The nature of the gameplay, it's pretty simple in that at the start of each round, you're going to get a hand of 3 cards. And these cards have 3 types of information on them. Well, so much for the 5s. All right, we have a special action, which is shown at top. You have a resource, which is shown at the bottom left. And you have an animal, which is shown at the bottom right. Okay, you have 1s and 2s on here. They suggest you start learning with the 1 cards, then add the 2s in later, which adds a more variety of actions up top here. It makes sense. What you do is you look at these 3 cards and you decide where you want to assign them in your action queue. You think of it that way. You have an A, B, and D slot for the card. So you're going to put 1 in each after looking at them and thoughtfully deciding what to do, not just random like I did. And then everyone's going to take their actions for the turn. Everyone takes the A action simultaneously, which is you reveal your card and you put it in one of these slots of your holder. And now you have this special power for as long as this card is visible in your holder. In this case, whenever I take a green cube, I get to adjust one of the markers on this track here, which I'll explain later. So you've got 1 action lined up here. Well, what happens in the future turns? Oh, your A card is going to go in one of these other slots. And 3rd round, you got an action in here. Round 4 on, what's going to happen is you take an action and you're going to cover up something that you already have, so you're going to lose it. So you'll have a shifting chain of actions as the game progresses, and you can put them on, cover up whatever you want based on what you're trying to get in the game. Everyone then simultaneously takes the B action. You reveal your B card, you get that resource, whatever it was. I get a brown cube, I add it to my resources here, and then I discard this card. C action. This you actually take in player order, as it's important that you do so. You are going to be placing, possibly, one of your explorers, little plastic figures here, on the island. You place them onto a colored region of the island by paying 2 cubes of that type. You start with 1 cube of each color. Since I have only 2 brown, clearly I'm going to a brown space. All right, so we go here. You don't have to place an explorer during the C phase. You can choose not to, and sometimes you won't be able to just because you lack the resources to put some guy out there. So if you don't place a guy on the board or move an explorer that's already on the board to a new location, you get to take a resource of your choice from the bank, which is good because you really want to put your guys on the board. And D action, okay, what I do here, I reveal it. Whatever animal is shown here gets bumped up 1 notch on the chart, and each token that I have of that animal gets me 1 point. Only for me. Doesn't matter who else has collected moths. I'm the one doing moth research right now, so I'm rewarded for all the moths that I've already looked at. Each player starts with a token chosen at random at the beginning of the game, and this is worth 2. So obviously if I had the moth token, I'd be happy to boost up moths and get 2 points. That's it for the cards. Each round you're going to get 3 cards. You assign 1, 2, 3. All right? You have to decide how to use them. Which one do you want the action for? Which do you want for a resource? Which do you want for boosting animals? The problem, of course, is you have only 3 cards. So sometimes you want 2 things in the A slot and nothing over here, but you just got to go with what you got. And you got to make use of those special actions. What you're trying to do on the island is trying to place explorers in camps so that you surround an animal region. The number on the tile shows you how many explorers you need, as well as how many bonus points you score when you surround that. You also take the animal tile and put it in your collection. I just got me a pika. All right. And I got 3 points for surrounding this. These markers stay here. I can use them again in the future should I surround other things. If I place this here, I've surrounded this moth. Oh, should have surrounded that before I boosted the moths, but maybe I'll boost them in the future. Right? If I go down here, I get this frog. If I place one here, I surround both this pika and these 4 surround a dodo. So 6 points at once and 2 tokens. Okay, so you're getting all these tokens. Tokens score points when you advance those markers on the track, and they're worth points at the end of the game. Okay, how does the game end? Well, you're advancing these markers, you and everyone else. They're going up at least as many spaces as the number of players each round, because each of you are assigning a card in the D slot, and therefore you must be boosting something. Plus, they may be boosted additionally based on special actions that you have. When there are little numbers on this track. Well, I'll show here. They start with 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You keep track, as you're playing, of the sum of where those markers are. So if I've got 2 here and 1 there, 1 here, 1 here, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. I'm at 8. Okay. When the sum of those markers reaches 7, 9, or 11 for a 2, 3, or 4 player game, the game ends at the end of that round. And then you score points for what you've collected. Okay? Each set of 5 markers is worth 10 points. And just in case it wasn't clear, a set is one of each of the 5 species in the Feldian Islian universe. 5 different ones. This includes what you start with. So if I start with this and collect these, that is 1 set with a fossa left over for use later. I wasted a fossa. Oh, I didn't waste the fossa, because in addition, each token you have is worth as many points as the number where the marker lies. So a fossa is worth 1 point, a moth is 2, the frog is 1, and so on. In addition, last thing, every 2 resources you have left is worth a point. You add those points to your sum and see who has the highest score. Now, big element of the game, right? And what's going to keep you puzzling as you look at the game are these special powers. The cubes down at the bottom and the animals, well, there's 5 cubes and 5 types of animals, and they appear in equal numbers across all the cards. But the cards themselves all have different powers, and they pretty much cover what you would expect if you were to sit down and say, give me every permutation of what's on the board here. So, for example, I place an explorer in a region that has a hat, okay, and there's a hat in each color as you look around the board, yellow, brown, green, etc. Place a region where a hat, and I score some bonus points. Okay, place where there's a rope, and I get to advance one of these markers. I don't score points when I do so, but it increases the value of what I've collected. Go where there's a water bottle, and it costs me only 1 cube instead of 2. You cannot duplicate an action in your chart, so I can't get 2 of these and go to all the water places for free. But you can have things where it costs me only 1 cube, and whenever I place in this, I get a resource of my choice. All right, go into yellow, get some points, advance a marker, get a resource of my choice. All tan ones are jokers for me. I can use them as any color. When I collect this resource, I advance a purple marker. I collect this resource, I get another one. When I advance either of those creatures on the scoring track, I get a resource of my choice or some bonus points. Right? The permutations that you might expect from what's in the game. There are explorers, there are tiles, there are landscape colors, there are resources. When you add in the 2 deck, you start using a few more of those things. Now I'm going to score bonus points whenever I place in the middle ring of spaces here, the landscape spaces, or in the outside ring, or the inner ring. Or when I place where there's another explorer, I pay only 1 resource. I can swap resource with the bank. I can get a bonus explorer. Now I've got more. So once you run out of explorers and they're all on the board, all I'm doing is moving guys around back and forth, trying to reuse them, ideally without having to move all of them in order to get more tokens. Get another guy and I can leave more things there. Let's see. Advance a marker. Oh, when I collect a tile, get a resource of my choice. Now this adds a little more difficulty because I'm fighting over these things. Get some points, advance a marker, have 4 cards in my hand at the start of the turn. I pick 3 of them, place them, and discard the 4th. Have a 4th action slot. 4 actions instead of 3. 33% better. There's an overview of La Isla, which I played 5 times now on a press copy from Ravensburger with 2, 3, and 4 players just to try all the combinations. And why did I say it reminds me of Roma? Because similar choices in terms of how you're going to be taking the actions. All right? Feld loves to explore the action selection mechanism. How are you choosing what you get to do? That's what he does over and over and over again. How are you going to take these choices? And they're often randomly given to you, these different options that you have. All right? Cubes fall out of the Amerigo Tower. And now you get to decide from the colors available what you're going to do. Or the cards that you get in Bruges, you're going to draft them, but you can only draft from what's available, and now you got to figure out how you're going to use each of those cards. This makes me think of Roma, where you're rolling the 3 dice and you get to assign them, and all you've got are cards, draw cards, get money, or use the cards that you've already played. And this is streamlined in that way, in that you've got 3 cards, and 1 has to go in each slot. You're getting 1 of those cubes, 1 of those animals is advancing, and you got 1 action. So you know you have to split everything across those 3. You don't have that many choices on how to do things, but then the choices add up round over round. And you start looking at the actions and saying, oh, I see where I want to go. What do you want to do initially? You have no idea. The board is open. It's all available to you. Once you've played a couple of times, then you can start looking and say, okay, I want to go here first because I think that will give me possibilities for where to go next. I've got all these 3 places that all have lassos together, and I've got some lasso action card. So I'm just going to go there just to get something to start with. Right? You have to have some sort of idea, and the cards guide you, but then you get to choose based on what else comes up. You're going to have 3 actions available to you, and you can't have the same action, but you can have similar ones where you stack them and be like, all right, if I go here, it's going to cost me 1 cube left, and I get a cube of my choice. Or I advance something. So you're trying to manipulate what is effectively a stock market of animals and try to bump up the value of certain things, where you're probably going to be in bed with other people that, hey, you like frogs? I like frogs. We both want frogs to go. Or, of course, you like frogs, you have more than I do, I'll hope that you boost frogs, and I'll just keep getting some as well. So you also need to focus on sets. If you don't get a set, you're throwing away 10 points. You're probably going to be getting something. Ideally, you're getting some kind of animals as you're doing things. Well, why not get the ones that give you a set? And of course, with 4 players, it becomes a lot more competition on particular spaces, but the time that you have to do everything is roughly the same because of the scaling endgame, where you're ending the game based on the sum of all those markers. So you have roughly the same amount of time, you end up with roughly the same amount of markers based on a 2, 3, or 4 player game, but then you have more or less competition, and the cards are more or less valuable depending on what's in play. Right? If you have the cards that give you bonuses when you go where there's an explorer, obviously better with 4 than is with 2. Right? But of course, you're going where someone else is, they might beat you to surrounding something before you can. So you have this stew of choices available to you, and you get a small dish each round, and you decide how you want to assign things. You keep building up from there and there. Build up your choices, and you collect those animals. And then at the end of the game, you find out that Eric has won. That is La Isla.